The morning sun cast long shadows across the swampy surface of Kepler 442b as Day pressed his face against the research station window. Thick mist rose from the dark water below, creating ghostly shapes that danced in the orange light. At 12 years old, Day had lived on this strange planet for 3 years, but the swamps still fascinated him every single day. "Day, come eat your breakfast," called his mother from the kitchen area. Dr. Park Hannah was already dressed in her white lab coat, ready for another day of studying the planet's unusual plant life. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she looked tired from staying up late with her research again. Day walked over to the small table, where his mother had placed a bowl of rice and some dried seaweed. The food came from the supply ships that visited their colony every few months. Most of what they ate was either grown in the station's greenhouse or shipped from Earth. Nothing that grew naturally on this planet was safe for humans to eat. "Mom, what are those sounds that come from the deep swamp at night?" Day asked as he picked up his chopsticks. He had been hearing strange calls for weeks now, deep and musical like whale songs, but much louder. Dr. Park Hannah paused while pouring her coffee. "I don't know, son. The other species in the colony say we should stay away from the inner marsh areas. They seem very afraid of whatever lives there." Their research station sat on the edge of New Sanctuary, the main colony settlement. The colony was home to several different alien species who had come to mine the rare crystals that grew deep underground. The crystals were very valuable and could power spaceships for long journeys. Between stars. The largest group in the colony were the Vrex, tall reptilian beings with green scaly skin and yellow eyes. They were excellent traders and controlled most of the mining operations. Their leader, Gorth, was almost 8 feet tall and spoke in a deep, rumbling voice that made the walls shake. The Thren were smaller but worked very hard. They looked like giant insects with 4 arms and shiny black shells on their backs. They did most of the actual digging and crystal collecting. Day thought they were fascinating, but they were always too busy working to talk much. The strangest residents were the Null, who weren't solid at all. They looked like clouds of glowing gas that changed colors when they talked. They handled the colony's administration and kept track of all the business deals. Day could never figure out how they held things or operated computers, but somehow they managed just fine. All these different species got along well in the colony, sharing resources and helping each other with their various jobs. The humans were the newest arrivals, and there were only about 20 of them total. Most were scientists like his mother, studying the planet's biology and geology. After breakfast, Day walked through the colony's main street to meet his friend Li Min at the school building. The street was made of metal grating that let the swamp water flow underneath. Tall poles held up bright lights that kept the area safe at night. The buildings were all raised several feet above the water level, on strong supports. "Did you hear those sounds again last night?" Min asked as soon as he saw Day. Min was 2 years older and lived with his father, who worked as a mining engineer. His father often came home with stories about strange things the miners found deep underground. "Yes, they were even louder than before," Day replied. "My mom says the aliens are scared of whatever makes those sounds." They walked past a group of Vrex who were loading crystal containers onto a transport vehicle. One of them, a female named Kess, noticed the boys and walked over. Her movements were smooth and graceful despite her large size. "Young humans," she said in her careful English, "you must be very careful near the deep waters. Ancient dangers sleep in the marsh heart. Even we who are strong fear what dwells there." "What kind of dangers?" Day asked, his curiosity growing stronger. Kess looked around nervously before answering. "Stories speak of a great beast, older than our colonies, older than the first ships that came here. It destroyed the early settlements before we learned to stay in the safe zones." Min grabbed Day's arm. "See, I told you we shouldn't go exploring out there." But Day felt more curious than afraid. Has anyone actually seen this beast recently? No human eyes have looked upon it and returned to tell the story, Kess replied solemnly. The wise ones built this colony far from its territory. We mine. Only where it allows us to mine. After Kess left, the boys continued to school, but they couldn't stop thinking about her words. The idea of some mysterious creature living in the swamps excited rather than frightened him. He had always loved animals back on Earth, and even the strange alien creatures he had seen seemed more interesting than dangerous. Their teacher, Mr. Song, was a middle-aged man who taught all the human children in one small classroom. Today, he was trying to explain mathematics, but they found it hard to concentrate. He kept looking out the window toward the misty swamplands that stretched beyond the colony's borders. The early explorers who first came to this planet found evidence of an advanced civilization, Mr. Song was saying. But whatever species built, it disappeared long before humans arrived. Some think they died from disease. Others believe they were destroyed by the planet's natural dangers. What kind of natural dangers? Asked Sun Young, a girl about Day's age whose parents ran the colony's medical center. Large predators, mostly. The swamps are full of creatures that could easily kill a human. That's why we have strict rules about staying within the safe zone boundaries. When school ended, Day walked home slowly, taking a longer route that led him closer to the swamp's edge. The air smelled of wet earth and unfamiliar plants. Strange birds with 4 wings flew overhead, calling to each other in high musical voices. Bioluminescent moss glowed softly on the tree trunks, creating a magical atmosphere that seemed to come from a fairy tale. As he stood watching the dark water, Day heard the sound again. Deep, resonant calls that seemed to come from far away. They didn't sound angry or threatening to him. Instead, they sounded almost sad, like someone calling for a friend who never answered back. That evening at dinner, Dr. Park Hana seemed worried. About something. She kept checking her communication device and looking out the windows toward the colony center. Is everything okay, Mom? Day asked. There have been some problems with the supply ships, she replied. 2 ships have disappeared while approaching the planet. The colony leaders are starting to talk about evacuation procedures. Evacuation? But this is our home now. It might not be safe to stay here, son. If something is destroying our supply ships, we might have to find somewhere else to live. Day felt a chill of fear, but not about the mysterious dangers everyone talked about. He was afraid of leaving this fascinating world before he had a chance to explore its secrets. The strange calls from the swamp seemed to be inviting him to discover something wonderful, and he didn't want to miss that opportunity. As night fell and the glowing plants began to shine brighter, Day made a decision. Tomorrow he would find a way to get closer to the deep swamp, no matter what the adults said about staying in the safe zones. Something in those musical calls was speaking directly to his heart, and he had to know what it was. The next morning, Day waited until his mother left for her laboratory work before putting his plan into action. He packed his school lunch, a water bottle, and a small flashlight into his backpack. His heart beat fast with excitement and nervousness. As he quietly slipped out of their research station, the colony was busy with its usual morning activities. Vrex workers were loading mining equipment onto transport vehicles while Thrin crews prepared for another day of crystal extraction. The Null supervisors floated above the activity like colorful clouds, coordinating the various operations through their strange glowing communications. Day walked casually toward the colony's eastern edge, trying to look like he was just taking a normal walk. The safe zone ended at a line of warning beacons that flashed red lights every few seconds. Large signs in multiple languages warned people not to go beyond this point without proper authorization and protection. He looked around carefully too. Make sure no one was watching, then quickly stepped over the boundary line and into the wild swampland beyond. The difference was immediate and dramatic. The sounds of the colony faded behind him, replaced by the mysterious noises of the alien wilderness. Strange plants grew everywhere in the deeper swamp. Some had leaves that glowed with soft blue light, while others made quiet humming sounds. As the wind passed through them, the trees were unlike anything from Earth, with twisted trunks that seemed to bend and curve in impossible directions. Their roots created a maze of natural bridges over the dark water. Day moved carefully from root to root, using them as stepping stones to avoid falling into the murky swamp water. He had no idea what kind of creatures might be swimming below the surface, and he didn't want to find out the hard way. As he went deeper into the marsh, the musical calls he had been hearing grew louder and clearer. They definitely sounded like some kind of communication, not just random animal noises. The calls had a pattern to them, like a song or maybe a language he couldn't understand. After walking for about an hour, Day came to a clearing where the water was deeper and clearer than anywhere else he had seen. The trees formed a perfect circle around this natural pond, and their glowing leaves reflected beautifully in the still water. It was like stepping into a magical fairy tale. Then he saw the tracks. Each footprint was enormous, easily 6 feet across, and pressed deep into the muddy bank. They were unlike any animal tracks Day had ever seen. The shape was somewhat like a giant hand, but with longer fingers and what looked like webbing between them. Whatever had made these tracks was much, much larger than any creature he could imagine. His excitement overcame his fear as he examined the tracks more closely. They were fresh, probably made within the last day or two. The creature that left them was still somewhere in this area. A deep, musical call echoed across the water, much closer than any he had heard before. Day looked up from the tracks and felt his breath catch in his throat. Something was rising from the center of the pond. At first, he could only see ripples spreading across the water's surface. Then a massive shape began to emerge, water cascading off its incredible form. The creature was unlike anything Day had ever imagined, even in his wildest dreams. It stood at least 30 feet tall, with smooth skin that seemed to shift colors like a living rainbow. Its body was somewhat like a giant salamander, but more graceful and elegant. Its head was large and intelligent-looking, with enormous eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. The creature's skin was currently displaying deep blues and purples, colors that somehow seemed peaceful rather than threatening. It moved slowly and carefully, as if it didn't want to disturb the tranquil beauty of the clearing. For several long moments, the boy and the creature simply stared at each other across the water. Day felt no fear, only amazement and wonder. The creature's eyes were gentle and curious, showing clear signs of intelligence and awareness. Then the creature made a sound. Not the deep musical call Day had been hearing, but something softer and more questioning. It tilted its massive head slightly, like a puppy trying to understand something new, without really thinking about what he was doing. Day reached into his backpack and pulled out his lunch. He unwrapped the rice ball his mother had made for him and held it up so the creature could see it. "Are you hungry?" he called out, his voice sounding very small in the vast clearing. The creature's skin shifted to lighter colors, mostly greens and golds that seemed to indicate interest or curiosity. It moved closer to the shore, each step creating gentle waves that lapped against the muddy bank. When it was close enough, Day carefully threw the rice ball toward the creature. The massive being caught it delicately with one finger, examining the small morsel with obvious fascination. After a moment, it placed the food in its mouth and made a sound that could only be described as pleased surprise. "You like it?" Day asked, smiling broadly. "I have more if you want some." He threw another rice ball, then another. Each time, the creature caught and ate the food with careful, gentle movements. Its skin grew brighter and more colorful, displaying what Day somehow understood were happy emotions. After eating the last of Day's lunch, the creature extended one enormous finger toward the boy. Day hesitated for just a moment, then reached out and touched the smooth, warm skin. The contact sent a strange tingle through his body, And suddenly his mind was filled with images and feelings that weren't his own. He saw the planet as it had been long ago, when creatures like this one lived in great cities beneath the swamp waters. He felt the loneliness of being the last of her kind, the sadness of centuries spent in solitude. And he felt her joy at finally meeting someone who wasn't afraid of her. "You're not scary at all," they whispered, his eyes filling with tears of sympathy. "You're just lonely." The creature's skin shifted to warm, golden colors, and she made a soft humming sound that seemed to express gratitude and affection. In that moment, Day knew he had found something more precious than any crystal the miners could dig up. He had found a friend. "I'll call you Oma," he said, using the Korean word for mother, "because you feel like family to me." The creature he now called Oma touched his face gently with her massive finger, and Dave felt her acceptance and love flow through the strange mental connection they had formed. He stayed with her for another hour, sharing his water and telling her about his life in the colony. When it was time to go home, Day promised to return the next day. As he walked back through the swamp, he could hear Oma's musical calls following him, but now they didn't sound sad anymore. They sounded happy and hopeful, like songs of joy echoing through the misty air. Back at the colony, nobody noticed that he had been gone. His mother was still busy with her research, and his friends were occupied with their own activities. Day went to bed that night with his heart full of excitement about his incredible secret. He had found the legendary swamp beast, and she wasn't a monster at all. She was the most wonderful friend he had ever had. Over the next 2 weeks, Day visited Oma every day after school. He told his mother he was exploring the safe areas near the colony, which wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Each visit strengthened the amazing bond between the boy and the gentle giant. Day learned that Oma could communicate through the colors of her skin as well as through the strange mental connection they shared. Bright yellows and oranges meant happiness and excitement. Deep blues and purples showed she was calm and peaceful. When she was curious about something, her skin would shimmer with silver and gold patterns. Oma showed Day incredible things hidden deep in the swamp. She led him to underwater crystal caves that glowed with their own inner light. The crystals here were different from the ones the miners dug up near the colony. These were alive somehow, pulsing gently like slow heartbeats, and creating beautiful music when the water moved around them. "The miners don't know about these, do they?" Day asked during one of their visits. Through their mental link, Oma shared images of the mining operations and her feelings about them. She wasn't angry about the mining, but she was sad that the other species were afraid of her. She had tried many times to approach the colony peacefully, but every time she got close, the aliens would panic and activate their defensive systems. "They think you want to hurt them," Day said, understanding the problem. "But you're just trying to be friendly." Oma's skin shifted to gentle greens that expressed her desire for friendship and communication. She showed Day more images through their link, and he saw something that amazed him. Oma had actually been protecting the colony all along. In the deeper parts of the swamp lived creatures that really were dangerous. Giant predators with razor-sharp teeth and claws roamed the waters at night, hunting for prey. But whenever they got too close to the colony, Oma would drive them away. The colonists never knew that their mysterious neighbor was the reason they were safe. "You're like a guardian angel," Day told her, and her skin glowed with warm, happy colors. One afternoon, Day was sharing his lunch with Oma when he heard someone calling his name from the edge of the clearing. His heart stopped as he recognized his mother's voice. Dr. Park Hana stepped through the trees, her face pale with worry and fear. "Day, get away from that thing right now," she called out, her voice shaking. "Mom, wait," Day said, standing up. "Quickly, she's not dangerous. Her name is Oma, and she's my friend." Dr. Park Hana stared in shock at the enormous creature sitting peacefully in the water. Oma's skin had shifted to nervous silver and blue patterns, and she was very carefully not making any sudden movements that might frighten the human woman. "Son, please come here slowly," his mother said, trying to keep her voice calm. "That creature could kill you without even meaning to." "No, she couldn't," Day replied firmly. "Watch this." He walked over to Oma and placed his small hand on her massive finger. Immediately, Oma's skin changed to warm golden colors, and she made soft, gentle sounds. Dr. Park Hana watched in amazement as her son communicated with the legendary swamp beast. Her scientific training helped her observe carefully instead of just reacting with fear. She could see that the creature was clearly intelligent and was treating Day with incredible gentleness. "How long have you been coming here?" she asked, still maintaining a safe distance. 2 weeks, Day admitted. "She's been alone for so long, Mom. She's the last of her kind, and she just wants friends." Oma seemed to sense that this was Day's mother. Her skin shifted to respectful purple and blue patterns, and she made a low, musical sound that somehow conveyed both greeting and apology. Dr. Park Hana took a small step closer, her scientific curiosity beginning to overcome her fear. "Can she understand us when we talk?" "She understands feelings more than words," Day explained. "But she's very smart. She knows about the colony and all the different species that live there." Over the next hour, Dr. Park Hana watched her son interact with Oma and began to realize what an incredible discovery this was. The creature showed clear signs of advanced intelligence, emotional depth, and peaceful intentions. This could be the most important xenobiological finding in human history. "We need to document this carefully," she told Day as they prepared to leave. "But we also need to be very careful about who we tell. If the colony leaders find out about this, they might try to capture or harm her." Meanwhile, back at the colony, the situation was getting worse every day. 3 more supply ships had disappeared while approaching the planet. The alien residents were becoming increasingly nervous and were making serious plans for evacuation. Gorth, the Vrex leader, called a meeting of all the colony's important people. Dr. Park Hana attended, sitting quietly while the aliens discussed their fears and concerns. "The ancient beast grows more aggressive," Gorth rumbled in his deep voice. "It destroys our ships and threatens our survival. We must leave this cursed world before it kills us all. But we have invested so much in this colony," protested Jex, one of the Thryn supervisors. "The crystal deposits here are the richest we have ever found." "Crystals are worthless if we are dead," replied Kes, the female Vrex who had warned Day about the swamp dangers. "The stories of our ancestors speak of this beast's terrible power. We should have listened to those warnings from the beginning." Dr. Park Hana listened to their discussion with growing understanding. The aliens weren't just afraid of Oma because of old stories. Something was actually destroying their ships, but it wasn't Oma doing it. Through her research and her observations of Oma's behavior, she was beginning to suspect that something else was responsible for the attacks. That evening, she and Day returned to visit Oma. Dr. Park Hana brought her recording equipment and began documenting their interactions with the gentle giant. She recorded Oma's color changes, her musical communications, and the obvious intelligence behind her behaviors. "Oma," Day said as they sat by the crystal-clear pond, "are you the one who's been destroying the supply ships?" Through their mental link, Oma shared images that made everything clear. She showed them the real culprits, a group of space pirates who had been hiding in the asteroid field near the planet. They were attacking the supply ships to steal their valuable cargo, but they were careful to make the attacks look like they came from the planet's surface. "The pirates are using Oma as cover for their crimes," Dr. Park Hana realized. "Everyone thinks the attacks are coming from the legendary swamp beast, so nobody is looking for the real threat." Oma's skin shifted to angry reds and oranges as she thought about the pirates. She had seen their ships sneaking around the planet's moons, but she had no way to warn the colonists. Her attempts to approach the colony had only made the aliens more afraid of her. "We have to tell the colony leaders the truth," they said. "We have to make them understand that Oma's trying to help, not hurt them." But Dr. Park Hannah shook her head sadly. "They're too frightened to listen right now. Gorth has already ordered the final evacuation preparations. Most of the aliens will be gone within a week." That night, as they walked back to their research station, both mother and son were quiet and thoughtful. They had discovered something wonderful, but they didn't know how to share it with a colony that was too scared to listen. Above them, the stars shone brightly in the alien sky, and somewhere among those stars, pirates planned their next attack on the innocent colonists below. The truth about Oma's gentle nature remained a secret known only to two humans who had looked past their fear to find friendship in the most unexpected place. The next morning brought news that would change everything. The evacuation fleet had been attacked while loading supplies, and several aliens had been killed. The time for keeping secrets was running out, and soon Day and his mother would have to decide whether to speak up for their giant friend or watch her be blamed for crimes she didn't commit. The morning after the attack on the evacuation fleet, everything in the colony changed. Fear and panic spread like wildfire through the settlement as the survivors told their stories. The pirates had been careful to attack from the direction of the deep swamp, making it look like the legendary beast had finally turned violent. "We barely escaped with our lives," Kess told the emergency council meeting. Her usually smooth scales were scarred from the battle, and her yellow eyes showed deep terror. "The creature's weapons were unlike anything we have seen before. It destroyed 3 of our ships in minutes." Gorth pounded his massive fist on the council table. "Enough talk. We evacuate everyone today. No more delays, no more discussion. This planet has become a death trap." Dr. Park Hannah sat in the back of the meeting room, her heart breaking as she listened to the false accusations against Oma. She wanted to speak up, to tell them the truth, but she knew they wouldn't listen. Their fear was too strong, and their minds were already made up. After the meeting, she hurried home to find Day packing his school supplies with tears in his eyes. "They're making everyone leave by tomorrow," he said sadly. "All the human families have to go on the first transport ship. We can't even say goodbye to Oma." "Maybe we can find a way to help her from wherever we end up," his mother said, but her voice lacked conviction. They both knew that once they left this planet, they would probably never see their gentle giant friend again. That afternoon, while the colony buzzed with evacuation preparations, a new threat appeared on the horizon. A massive corporate mining fleet dropped out of hyperspace and began approaching the planet. The lead ship immediately broadcast a message to the colony. "This is Captain Choi of the Deep Space Mining Corporation. We have purchased the rights to this planet and will begin full extraction operations immediately. All colonists must evacuate within 12 hours to avoid interference with our mining activities." Gorth was furious. "They cannot do this. We have legal claims to this world." But the corporation's lawyers had found loopholes in the colony's contracts. The recent attacks and the planned evacuation had given them the excuse they needed to claim the planet was abandoned. Their massive automated mining ships were already descending toward the surface. Day watched from his bedroom window as the enormous mining vessels landed in the swamp. Each ship was the size of a city block, equipped with powerful excavators and drilling equipment. They began their work immediately, tearing through the delicate ecosystem that Oma had protected for centuries. "They're destroying her home," Day whispered. His hands pressed against the glass. Dr. Park Hannah stood behind him, watching the destruction with growing horror. "Those machines are too big and too powerful. They'll strip the entire planet bare." Within months, the mining operations worked around the clock, their bright lights turning night into day. The sound of drilling and excavation echoed across the water, drowning out the natural sounds of the swamp. The bioluminescent plants began to dim and die as the machines poisoned the water with their chemical runoff, but the mining corporation had awakened something far worse than they could have imagined. Deep beneath the swamp, in caves that had been sealed for thousands of years, ancient predators began to stir. The vibrations from the mining equipment cracked open underground chambers that had been flooded and forgotten since the planet's prehistoric past. The first sign of trouble came during the night shift. A mining crew reported that one of their excavators had broken through into a large underground cavity. Strange sounds were coming from the hole, and the workers were too frightened to investigate. By morning, the truth became terrifyingly clear. Creatures began emerging from the broken underground chambers. They looked like a nightmare mixture of giant centipedes and mechanical horrors, with armored shells that could deflect energy weapons and razor-sharp claws that could tear through metal. These were the real monsters that the ancient stories had warned about. They were the reason Oma's people had originally built their cities, to seal the underground passages. They were the predators that Oma had been keeping contained for centuries. The mining crews panicked and tried to flee, but the creatures were fast and deadly. Within hours, 2 of the massive mining ships had been overrun. The corporate security forces were no match for the armored predators, and their weapons barely scratched the creatures' thick shells. The attacks quickly spread beyond the mining sites. The creatures poured out of the broken earth like a living nightmare, heading toward the colony and the evacuation ships. The alien colonists, already terrified and confused, found themselves caught between the corporate mining fleet and an army of prehistoric horrors. In the chaos, Day made a desperate decision. While his mother was helping coordinate the evacuation efforts, he slipped away from the research station and ran toward the deep swamp. He had to find Oma and warn her about what was happening. The journey to their usual meeting place was dangerous now. The mining lights had changed the familiar landscape, and the sounds of battle echoed from multiple directions. Day could see the corporate ships under attack, their bright lights flickering as the creatures swarmed over them. When he finally reached the crystal pond, he found Oma waiting for him. But she was different now. Her usually peaceful colors had been replaced by angry reds and protective oranges. Her enormous size, which had always seemed gentle before, now looked truly powerful and formidable. Through their mental link, Day felt her rage and sorrow. The mining machines had destroyed her ancient home and awakened the very monsters her people had died to contain. She was preparing to fight, but she was vastly outnumbered and would be fighting alone. "I won't let you face this by yourself," Day told her, his young voice filled with determination. "We're family, remember? Families stick together." Oma's skin shifted to grateful golds and greens, but she also projected images of the danger he would face. The creatures were deadly, and even she might not be able to protect him from them all. "Then we need help," Day said, an idea forming in his mind. "We need to make the others understand that you're not their enemy. You're their protector." He pulled out his communication device, the one his mother had given him for emergencies. His hands shook as he set it to broadcast on all frequencies, knowing that everyone in the colony would hear his message. "This is Kim Day," he said into the device. "I'm in the deep swamp with the creature you all call the swamp beast. Her name is Oma, and she's not your enemy. She's been protecting us all along. The real monsters are the ones attacking us now, and she's getting ready to fight them. But she can't do it alone. She needs our help." He paused, looking up at Oma's massive form as she prepared for battle. "She's not a monster. She's the last guardian of this world, and she's about to risk her life to save all of us. Please, if you can hear this, help her. Help us." As Day's message spread through the colony's communication network, the sounds of battle grew closer. The ancient predators were approaching their location, drawn by the lights and sounds of the mining operations. Soon, the final confrontation would begin. And everything would depend on whether the colonists could overcome their fear and see the truth about their gentle giant protector. In the distance, the first wave of creatures emerged from the darkness, their armored shells gleaming in the mining lights. Oma rose to her full height, her skin blazing with protective colors, ready to defend the boy who had become her family and the colony that had never understood her true nature. The battle for the planet's future was about to begin. Day's desperate message reached every communication device in the colony, but the first response came from an unexpected source. Dr. Park Hannah's voice crackled through his communicator as she ran toward the swamp, her scientific equipment bouncing. In her backpack, "Day, I'm coming to help," she called out. "I've been documenting everything about Oma. I have proof that she's been protecting us." Behind her, other voices began joining the communication channel. Lee Min's father, the mining engineer, spoke up first. "If the boy is right, we've been wrong about everything. My sensors show massive underground chambers that were recently broken open. Something was sealed down there for a reason. The colonies." Communication network buzzed with confused and frightened voices as people tried to understand what was happening. The alien colonists were evacuating as fast as they could, but some of the ships were trapped by the attacking creatures. In the Crystal Pond clearing, Oma stood ready to fight. The first wave of the ancient predators emerged from the darkness. Like living nightmares, they moved with deadly speed despite their massive size, their armored shells clicking and scraping as they crawled over the terrain. Day pressed himself against a large tree as Oma charged forward to meet the first creature. Her massive hands struck with incredible force, sending the monster flying backward into the dark water. But more creatures kept coming, surrounding her from all sides. "She can't fight them all," Day whispered into his communicator. "There are too many." Dr. Park Hannah's voice came through clearly. "I'm broadcasting all my research data about Oma to every ship in the evacuation fleet. They need to see the truth." The truth was in the recordings Dr. Park Hannah had made over the past weeks. Video files showing Oma's gentle interactions with Day, her obvious intelligence, and most importantly, her protective behavior toward the colony. The data also included sensor readings that proved the supply ship attacks had come from space pirates, not from the planet's surface. Slowly, some of the evacuating aliens began to understand what had really been happening. The first ship to turn around was piloted by Kess, the female Vrex, who had warned Day about the swamp dangers. "If the human child speaks truth, then we have abandoned our protector," her voice came over the emergency channel. "My ship's weapons are limited, but I will help fight these true monsters." Her small transport ship swooped low over the battle, firing energy beams at the creatures attacking Oma. The weapons weren't very powerful, but they distracted the monsters and gave Oma a chance to fight more effectively. Soon, more ships began returning. Some of the Thryn mining vessels had cutting tools that could slice through the creature's armor. A few brave Null administrators used their energy manipulation abilities to create defensive barriers around the battle zone. But it was a young human voice that made the real difference. Sun Young, the girl from Day's school, had convinced her parents to stay and help. Her mother was the colony's head medical officer, and her father was a communications specialist. "My dad is linking all our ship computers together," Sun Young announced over the communication network. "We can coordinate our attacks if we work as a team." This was the moment that showed humanity's greatest strength. Not superior weapons or advanced technology, but the ability to bring different species together and inspire them to cooperate. Day's simple message about friendship and loyalty had started something that grew into a multi-species alliance. Mr. Song, their teacher, took charge of coordinating the civilian evacuation while the armed ships engaged the creatures. All families with children moved to the emergency shelters. Combat vessels form attack formations around the swamp creature. She's our ally now. The battle raged for hours as more underground chambers cracked open and released additional predators. Oma fought with incredible courage, but she was taking serious damage. Her beautiful color-changing skin was scarred and torn, and her movements were becoming slower and more labored. During a brief pause in the fighting, Day ran to her side. Through their mental link, he felt her pain and exhaustion. She was dying, but she was determined to protect everyone until the very end. "Oma, please don't leave me," Day whispered, tears streaming down his face. "You're the best friend I've ever had." Her massive finger touched his face gently, and through their connection, she shared one final gift. Images flowed into Day's mind, showing him hidden locations throughout the swamp where her people had left knowledge and technology that could help protect the planet. She was passing on the responsibility of guardianship to him and his species. Final wave of creatures emerged from the deepest underground chambers. These were the largest and most dangerous monsters, ancient predators that had been sealed away for good reason. Even working together, the combined colonist fleet seemed too small to stop them, but Oma had one last surprise. As the enormous predators approached, she began to sing. Her musical calls, which had first attracted Day to the swamp, now rose in a complex harmony that resonated through the water and the earth itself. The song awakened ancient defense systems that her people had built long ago. Crystal formations throughout the swamp began to glow and pulse with energy. The living crystals that Oma had shown to Day during their peaceful visits were actually part of a planetary defense network. As her song reached its peak, beams of pure energy erupted from crystal nodes all across the swamp, striking the largest predators and driving them back into their underground caves. The effort exhausted the last of Oma's strength. She collapsed in the shallow water of their special pond, her colors fading to gentle blues and silvers. Day rushed to her side, holding her massive head as she prepared to say goodbye. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for being my friend and for protecting everyone." Through their fading mental link, Oma shared feelings of love, gratitude, and hope. She had found the family she had been searching for, and she had passed on her guardianship to species who could work together to protect this world. As the sun rose over the damaged but victorious colony, representatives from all the different alien species gathered around Oma's resting place. They had seen the truth about their gentle protector, and they were ashamed of their fear and misunderstanding. "We will build a memorial here," Gorth announced, his deep voice filled with respect. "And we will stay to help rebuild what the mining corporation destroyed." The corporate mining fleet, badly damaged by the creature attacks, was forced to abandon their operations. The colonists' legal claims to the planet were strengthened by their heroic defense against the ancient threat. Dr. Park Hannah worked with teams from all the different species to study the crystal technology that Oma had revealed. The living crystals could be used to monitor and protect the planet's ecosystem while still allowing sustainable mining operations. Years later, when Day had grown up to become a xenobiologist like his mother, he stood before a beautiful crystal memorial that hummed with gentle music. He was teaching a group of young students from multiple species about cooperation and understanding. "Oma taught us that being different doesn't make someone dangerous," he told his mixed class of human, Vrex, Thrin, and Null children. "She showed us that the greatest strength comes from looking past our fears to find the friendship that connects all living beings." One of his young students, a Vrex child named Kess Jr., raised her hand. "Teacher Day, do you think there are still creatures like Oma somewhere in the deep swamp?" Day smiled and looked toward the protected wetlands that now covered most of the planet. His research had discovered several sealed chambers that showed signs of life, and sometimes at night, he could hear familiar musical calls echoing across the water. "I think there might be," he replied. "And if there are, I hope someday we'll be wise enough to approach them with friendship instead of fear." The memorial crystal pulsed with warm golden light, and for just a moment, Day felt a familiar touch in his mind. Oma's legacy lived on in the protected planet, in the cooperation between species, and in the lesson that humanity's greatest gift was not conquering others, but inspiring them to become their best selves. The swamp that had once been feared as a place of monsters was now known throughout the galaxy as a sanctuary of peace, where different species worked together to protect something beautiful and irreplaceable. And at the center of it all stood a crystal monument to the friendship between a lonely giant and a brave young boy who chose to see past the surface to find the love underneath. In the end, that was humanity's true strength, the courage to extend compassion to those who were different, and the wisdom to know that every friendship changes the universe in small but important ways.